Hello and welcome to the channel. Today I'd like to do right off the heels essentially of my last Airbus A340 by LVFR, the 300 variant. So that was a $30 aircraft and it inspired me to purchase an aircraft that is north of $100 in the X-Plane simulator market. I am not an X-Plane 12 guru. However, I figured why not try a Toliss aircraft? I've had my eye on this bird for quite a while, but I had to build up my Airbus side stick for my throttle quadrants, my flaps, and all the other things. If I have to recommend you anywhere, I'd recommend you to my community tab, and you can see pictures of the individual throttles and the flaps and the retract levels there. Because when you're spending $100+ on an airplane, what you want to see is fidelity. And I was really just curious, based off of finishing up that via LVFR aircraft, what this bird had to offer, and the simulator in general. And I know the physics model is different, and as the precursor warning I have to give, the Service Update 14 is the current version of Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020. So that is imminently changing, hopefully, towards the better with the new physics and ground contact patch model. And Flight Simulator, being known for its visual fidelity, is definitely one of the major differences I see in these two simulators. Now, X-Plane 12, this is vanilla. There are no modifications, no active sky, no nothing like that for DLC. This is what you see is what you get right out of the factory when you purchase this on Steam. So, taking that and throwing that in a dumpster, for me, it's good enough, because for $100, what we want to know is how is the actual plane? Because when you're at 30,000 feet, it does not matter to me, particularly if you're using the Bing Maps model or not for your scenery, because blue water looks like blue water. And then speaking of blue water, let me go ahead and just pause for a second, film out to the blue sky, so that I can post to you this. And obviously, as you can see, it is a little bit of information on the left in terms of what we are going to be going with aircraft specifications and weights today. This is the 340-600, obviously by Toliss, X-Plane 12. So our stats are on the left. Our route is on the right. We are going to be departing the SID, gap 7, from runway 27 left, and we are going to hopefully be approaching runway 8 right on the Kana 2 approach in Honolulu. So it's almost 3,000 miles, give or take. Hopefully, give, take, I don't know. This aircraft is capable of much, much more, but I've gone ahead and programmed 45 minutes worth of extra loitering fuel in case the weather out there is not appropriate or conducive to landing. It should be an RNAV approach into 8 right, but the thing is, I'm not going to film the entire flight, so I'll cut out the majority of it for you guys out there in viewership land. However, I am going to say this will be a longer video, as you've probably seen by the timestamp. I just want to put that as a disclaimer in the beginning, because this aircraft has such fidelity that you literally can't skip. You can't skip steps. This isn't an LVFR aircraft. This is more akin to a Phoenix 320. And if you know anything about the Phoenix 320, you know that the systems depth is extraordinary. This is absolutely on that level, and if you don't do things for full setup, this plane gets extremely upset at you and will not fly properly, especially with the autopilot and navigation vertically and horizontally. So that being said, let's hop on board. Thanks for joining me today. I am definitely going to film the MCDU procedures, the starter procedures, the taxi, the takeoff, the climb, so as you can see the performance that this aircraft offers with its fidelity. And then once I get up to a relatively decent altitude on the climb out, I'll go ahead and complete the rest of the flight. I will probably throw in portions where I just do possible flybys and scenic things of that nature, but I won't, have you sit through the whole flight like I'm going to for the approximate upwards of close to 5 hours. However, I will do that in real time because I want to see the fuel management system, and I would like to see the aircraft calculate with the MCDU the values that it says we're going to use compared to what we actually do use, and I will tell you, it is extremely accurate. So, as it were, let's hop on board and start this beast up and get this flight on the way. Thanks for joining me. Okay, so first things first, fidelity. Yes, everything in this cabin is indeed clickable. Now you're going to notice, of course, X-Plane 12, it's a new cup of tea for me. It's not Bing Maps, so if the scenery is disgusting, it's good enough. And the reason we're here is obviously for the Toliss 340. So what I want to do is just display a lot of the really neat things that this aircraft has. Although if I had one minor gripe about it, it would definitely be the way that you install these aircraft in terms of like this EFB, the Avi tab for the charts and the Navigraph and everything. It's less than ideal. It looks more like a very basic operating system than a chart, so to say. Like, the ones you get in Microsoft Flight Simulator, you can actually download your charts from the PDF files, but there is a way to actually look at your procedures and your plates, which we will get into briefly. But I just wanted to point out how it is a little different looking than the glitz and glamour, I would say, that Microsoft Flight Simulator has. So that's kind of something to just keep in mind when you're looking at this. Yes, it's not pretty, but it's a functional 100%. Checklists and everything very easy to read and go through. So there's always that. But when you're installing these things, you're looking up here like at these plugins, and to get the Avi tab working, you have to go out on the internet and download this specifically to get that portion of the EFB working. And then of course, for the Toliss, there's all kinds of simulations and pre-programmed and random failures and all types of stuff that go on with the fidelity that this aircraft has to offer. So it has the tiller assignment, which is really neat. You can use your Airbus side stick to use the tiller, and you can also use the rudders. Of course, I have the TFRP rudders as well, so that is a thing. I've gone ahead and purchased, obviously, the mandatory requirements for an aircraft that's $100+. We have the manual controls in real life for the spoilers. We have the flap settings. We have everything you see here is essentially what's sitting as far as the power and engine management control quadrants are concerned. I have the physical buttons with these, so we're looking at individual throttles here that I can manipulate in real time with my hands, because when you have a 4-engine aircraft, you absolutely need these, do you not? You need all independent controls, because that's essentially what you want when you have an aircraft of this level. So, that being said, you're going to say, okay, what's next? Well, I want to just kind of say, after you've seen the flight plan, you know obviously by now that you're not going to have to sit through the whole thing, but I do want to cover, obviously, the whole procedure of getting this aircraft up and running, including this initial MCDU setup, the taxi, the takeoff, and the climb. I feel that it's very important to get that in terms of coming across for the fidelity. So that has to be captured for sure. So one of the things that is necessary on this aircraft is the 7-minute IRS for the inertial reference system to start up. So we'll let our screens power up, and then we're going to go ahead and start the APU. And because I am such a professional, I'm literally not even going to do an APU fire check. We'll just assume that the fire bottle squibs are working very well. That being said, yes, takeoff is going to be 28 left. We're going to do the gap 7 SID, and then we're going to do the Kana 2 star, followed by an RNAV approach. If it's visual, we'll just hand fly, because the one thing this aircraft allows me to do is get a very real sensation of when you're in a real aircraft and you are on your takeoff roll as a passenger or your landing roll as a passenger, and you can see you have a smooth flying captain, no bumps, no shimmies, no shakes, rattles, and rolls. This aircraft in this sim allows you to understand the skill level that those pilots have, essentially because, well, one, I'm not an Airbus pilot, and two, this aircraft demonstrates a suspension physics model and contact patch on the ground and weight distribution that I have not experienced in any simulator to date. This is the definitive version, in my opinion, of what quote-unquote study level can be, or should be, possibly even is. So flap door open, APU start on. Now, It's very unfortunate that I have to say, something you just have to feel for yourself. Yes, I spent $100 plus on this aircraft, so it's very unjust for me to say. It's just something you have to purchase and experience for yourself, but I can assure you nothing else that I have ever flown in a simulator environment has flown and felt like this aircraft. You saw our data sheet page, on the left, we saw our flight route on the right earlier, exteriorly, when I showed you the plan, and we're working with the weight, and you can absolutely feel the total weight that this aircraft is going to carry. And I would assume, I haven't had a lot of time on this aircraft, but I would assume the more weight you have, the more situational dynamics you are given with, body roll and wing flex and things, because this aircraft 100% feels very nice and very realistic. I don't know how else to explain it. So, okay, we've got our APU master on and our starter available. I'm going to go ahead and get some air going. So the first thing we're going to want to do is make sure the packs are in fault mode, because we don't want to make sure that. We want to make sure they come out of fault, so that we have one air conditioner and two air conditioners running on the APU bleed. So to save us that 7 minutes, we'll get started early. We'll align IRS 1, 2, and 3 with nav. We'll let that do its thing, and then we'll make sure that we have at least our nav 1 on, and our emergency lights are pre-armed. Now, this aircraft, everything you see, what you see is what you get, essentially. This aircraft 100% has functionality, clickability, so on and so forth. There's nothing here that's a gimmick. This is all real and it all works, which is incredible. So to do our MCDU setup, what we're going to do is we're going to come down to VHF3 here, and I want to make sure that it's in data, because that is going to allow us to set up our MCDU. So we can't really do too much in terms of, we're not going to be able to clear up this right here until essentially we have the alignment going on. So I should essentially be able to upload my flight plan. I know that I have 300 passengers here that I programmed for Simbrief, and we'll let that upload. I'm just going to set this now. I am new to this. Not a disclaimer, I absolutely am not an Airbus pilot, so just keep that in mind. It is what it is. I just try to bring you what I can, and I'm still figuring out what to do. However, I don't want too much time to go by between uploads for what was effectively my LVFR A340. So on the previous review. So what I want to do is just point out on the MCDU here that we have 1, 2, and 3 aligning, because we're doing the diff rip, as they were call it. So the IRS is working, and I want to try to do the flight plan data link so that we can get all the important information into our nav computer here. That being said, the chart that you saw in the overlay earlier is where all of this information is coming from. Essentially, I'm downloading it into the MCDU from Simbrief. All of our routes, all of our altitudes, all of our wind data, you name it, it's getting uploaded. Gives us all kinds of things: block fuel, takeoff weights, CG, all of the stuff that this aircraft needs to be happy. Performance data uplink. Yep. It's given us AOC. Uplink to data. So being able to do this is a portion that I am still getting familiar with. So let's hop on over here and see right here, KSFO. See, now it knows the weights. It's updated everything. It knows that we're taking off at San Francisco International. The reason that I picked this airport is because that's where I did my LVFR 340. So we're going to get this right, actually. Dry. We're going to go with standard 29.92. And we'll compute. Yes, there's a data here, configuration 1 plus F. It gives us our V1, V rotate, and V2 speeds, which is really cool. So 139 to 162. So if I come down into performance here, I'm going to type in 140. And then I'm going to get my next one, VR 162. And then I'm going to get my V2 168. We'll program that in. We got the transient of 18,000 to go to standard, but we're already at 29.92. And we are taking off of 28L. For argument's sake, we are not going to basically be interacting with ATC, so to speak. We'll see if I can clear that right there. To do that, we'll fill in the runway in a second here. So I'm just going through all of this and making sure that it's all correct. Cost index of 15, all of that was entered for us. Cruise entered for us. Destination, and we're going to leave that out because we do not know the QNH, the barometric pressure, the temperature, the magnetic wind, direction, and speed, because we're nowhere near the airport there in Honolulu. We're still in California, obviously. So diffs rip. So we've got our flight plan in here, and then I'm going to go ahead and essentially click on SFO. We're going to tell it on departure that, as our chart stated from Simbrief, we want to do 28 left. We're going to shoot the gap 7 departure, and transient, we're just going to say none. So we're going to insert that. We have discontinuity, so we'll remove discontinuity so that the navigation computer can actually figure out where it wants to go without having to have that discontinuity. We could go direct if we were getting, say, manual coordinates out, but we're not going to do manual coordinates, so we're just going to fly the SID. Get rid of the discontinuity. Looking for all green. It's got all of our speeds. It's calculating. So it looks like our cruise level is going to be top of climb, 38,000 feet. Bebop, Baraz, below. And then we're going to have a stepped climb from 38,000 to 40,000 feet. And then we have PHNL. So let's clear this discontinuity. And then let's go ahead and go down to destination. And we are going to arrive. We're going to do 8 right. So let's look for our 8 right. RNAV 8 right. And we are going to do, see if we can find the Kana 2. And that's what we want for that. So let's go 08 right, Kana 2, and enter. So we did not pick a transition, but that's okay. We've got a top of descent. We've got everything now essentially that we're looking for. So 40,000 feet through the Kana 2 star, and then the final approach into the RNAV 8 right. So long as we follow this, we should be good. It's got a missed approach on where to hold. So that's happy. So DI, init, F, diffs, rip, right? Rad nav. We want to make sure this is all set. And for now, we are good because we are flying out. So init, we'll go back again and we'll just make sure we'll go to the next page. And we will confirm that everything is in there, and it is. So we'll go back to the performance again, and like I said, that runway 28 left is in there. So let's see if we got 1, and then we'll go to the next. If I could click the correct button. So there we go, estimated fuel on board, which is neat because I have flown so far from let's see, Honolulu, I guess it was, to RJBB, which is Kansai Airport in Japan, and these estimated fuel calculations are 100% dang near on the button, so to speak, right? So we've got that going on. Let's go back to our data and let's look at our IRSs again. And they're still aligning. That's okay. We've got that done. So I'm going to come back over here and I'm going to look at my data calculation computer here. And we already have all this in there. It says that we're fine, right? We're going to have plenty of room to take off. 28 left. It's one of the longest runways here, along with the 28 right. And then weight and balance. So let's see if we can go to performance and check all the rest of this out. Flex to temp. We shall leave blank. We're going to do a full power takeoff. Okay, flight level 40,000. We're supposed to report at yada yada yada, so on and so forth. Cruise level 38,000. So we'll let the, I'm going to go ahead and program this for 38,000 for my own reference. But we'll just leave it as is with that for now. And then we are going to turn on our predictive wind shear right now, because if you don't set that on, it gets very angry. Okay. So, and just to review, everything is working. Pressures, electricals, shed buses, generator 1 through 4 off, as we are not running the engines. DC power, AC power, both look good. Hydraulics, AP was obviously good. Air conditioning is good. Doors are good. Closing green. Cabin, cockpit, oxygen. We've got wheels here. We've got temperatures and pressures. Flight control surfaces. We've got fuel here. So it is indicating that we have fuel on board. That is good. Let's see what it's saying here. So it thinks that the trip is going to take 34,700. Okay, so we have 34,700 as an estimated burn with 52,660 kg in the tank. Okay, so 27.5 for gross weight CG. So if we're at 27.5, we're going to want to spin this here. We need to get to 27.5. So I'll take care of that in a second here. See if we can't not turn that. I have to reset one of my controls as well. I noticed actually that one of the input axes is in reverse. So let me go ahead and not bore you with that. I'll pause it and I'll fix that for the changeover to the correct direction on the axis, and I'll be right back. Okay, now that that's all set up, I've gone ahead and made sure that I've got my tiller access correct, and I think what we are is ready for pushback. So let's go ahead and bring up the plugin tab here for the Toliss ISCS screen and the ground services. I'm going to go ahead and turn my parking brake off, and I'm going to ask for the pushback to push me back. So let's see how that goes on. And to do that, we just want to start the pushback from the nose wheel. We are actually in a relatively easy area to back out of. Apologies for the guy driving through the door there. Okay, just like that, pushback complete. We are going to go for our 4-engine start. Everything is looking good. We've got the tiller set up. It's all appropriate. We've got all of our calculations. And let's go ahead and check the bleeds. We'll go to the bleed page here for the air. We're going to throw the packs into the off. Right now, bleeds, good, good. Bleeds, let's take off 1 through 4. Let's turn on our fuel pumps. Okay. And let's go ahead and throw on our rotational beacon and auto strobes. looks good. We'll throw on the taxi light. We'll leave the landings off for now. Auto, auto. Everybody buckle up. Okay, good to go. Let's get some rotation going here. So we'll start number 1 and 2, and then 3 and 4. So we'll swap our engine switch to the ignition start over there. And then we're going to flip our engine 1 switch on. As soon as we need to go here, up a little bit, makes it easier to see. And then flipping the switch 1. And ignition start. So we're getting rise in our N3. Naturally parking brake set. While that's coming online, before I forget, I'm going to throw the transponder into transmit report. And wait for that to come online. Okay, there we go. There we go. That's one. So let's go ahead and bring the second engine up online. Clear the cautions. And it's just letting us know that the bleed is off for 1. Throw that on. Get these engines up and running. Once they're running, we'll be able to clean up all the faults. Alright, let's go for 3. Throw the bleed on. Generator 1 is on. Available. Good to go. Let's throw the 4th one on. Okay, everything's still looking good. Engine 3 bleed on. Pack 1 on. Okay, swap our switch back to mode normal. It's available, so we'll throw our pack on and our bleed air. Let's remove the APU air. We'll let that cool down for a second, and then we will turn that off. And we've got no generator errors. That's good to go. Lights are good. And let's clear these. Okay, those are clear. Going to start the chronometer. And let's remove the APU. So available and then off. Yes, we'll just do off, correct. So APU should shut down. It's going to run, and then it will definitely turn off. Okay, takeoff signs on. It gives us a little bitsy of a checklist here. Flaps to take off, right? Because now we are looking at having flight control surfaces, right? Everything's in the green. So we're looking at our numbers and our throws here, right? We'll go to flaps condition 1, as that's what it wants. We're looking at the deploy, slats, and flaps. Spoilers to arm. And what I want to do is 27.5. So we need to go to 27.5 here for our trim. So right about there, hopefully. Back to the center position here. And we're verifying everything's good. Obviously our GPS is still okay. The rudder and elevator and all the surfaces look pretty appropriate. So takeoff config test, and then auto brake to reject the takeoff. It's letting us know what to do, which is really cool. So auto brake to reject the takeoff, I believe. Let's see. Armed, config test, spoilers to armed. Armed, config test. Let's remove the parking brake and give this piece a little bit of throttle. And see what it sounds like, huh? And hopefully nobody's behind us. Okay, so we've got a message there. Flight control, pitch trim, and MCDU disagree. So we'll have to get to 27. So let's figure out where 27.5 is. I wish that there was like a thing on here like how Microsoft, maybe there is, I'm new to Flight Simulator here for X-Plane 12, but I wish there was a way to actually get that the way that it should be. Like if it just displayed the numbers actually. And basically let's try to get the steering here going. So still getting the pitch trim, but this is important because I want you all to see essentially the level of detail that this aircraft offers. If you don't do it the way that it's supposed to be set, it is absolutely not happy. So I'll taxi down there, but in doing that, I want to let you see that this aircraft definitely, I'm using the tiller now. The tiller is capable of steering this without using the rudders, of course, but then an item that the Microsoft Flight Simulator does not have, may never have, is the actual camera. So you've got a parking camera, driving camera there for your ground. Shows you your magenta lines for clearance. It's nice to be able to see that. You've got one for your primary and then your first officer's condition there, which is really nice to see. So all kinds of options. Definitely nothing here that is a gimmick. It's all there. So let's go ahead and get this all the way lined up. And in an effort to save some time, I'll bring you back on when we are right at the runway threshold, ready to take off, and I've got all of the takeoff configs and everything set up. Be right back. Okay, yeah, just another super quick edit here. Rather than bring you on, I realized I didn't mention what it was like to taxi this aircraft. So, to taxi the Toliss 340, as I may have mentioned there, it feels very weighty. The sounds of actually going over the tarmac here and using the tiller to control essentially an aircraft that's 267,400 kg. It feels all of that, and I've never felt anything in the simulator like that before. So it's absolutely worth noting that, my goodness, this is quite a simulation. So I've also gone ahead and pulled up the San Francisco chart here for 28 left, and it's an interesting beast, to say the least. If you're still here through this, I appreciate it. I've gone ahead and set the trim to the appropriate level there, pitch up 2.9 degrees for our CG. And we no longer get any warnings. Should have plenty of fuel. It's a nice enough morning to take off here at San Francisco with an A340-600. So one thing, if you've seen my Latin VFR 300 series of this aircraft, the exceptional climb rate that it had, when in theory this was notoriously underpowered, the A340-300. However, in this version with the 600, I think it would be interesting to see the difference. Obviously, I took off 27 right for Microsoft Flight Simulator, but in this one for X-Plane and the 600, we have the upgraded engines, and I believe you're going to see a reduced performance that you saw for the 300, which, if anything, the 300 would underperform compared to the 600, especially with this one's newer engines, and particularly the attention to detail with the flight model. So everything's set, we're in the green. I'm going to go ahead and just line on up. Obviously, you know, not really doing too much of the ATC stuff today. We'll throw the landing lights on, and we'll go ahead and start heading towards Honolulu. Again, for you all out there, it's going to be hit or miss video, essentially, in terms of having to watch the whole flight, which you won't have to. So I will do that for you, and then obviously I'll bring you back when we're closer towards the Cana 2 approach. And that way, you know, save as much boredom as possible. So everything looked good. It seems as though we're going to be taking off and then making a right-hand turn so that we can do this abbreviated Gap 7 departure. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to rev up the inners first and then the outers. And take off thrust. Here we go. Again, 300 passengers on today, 262,000 kg aircraft weight. You can see the dipping and the bobbing of the nose wheel. That's not me, that's literally the physics that this aircraft simulates. We're waiting for, you can hear the sound difference, the front wheel hopping there.
V1.
And then the pull off, positive rate, gear up. Auto thrust is on. .600 feet, flaps up. You can hear the sound difference. And then I'm going to go to climb, thrust to climb, autopilot 1 on, flight bars 1 and 2 on, climb, nav transponder standby. I swore I set that. Okay, well that's cool. We'll just break some FAA rules. San Francisco off our nose there. So this is the theoretical Gap 7. We've abbreviated it to make it a little bit quicker. The aircraft is flying in autopilot 1 mode with auto thrust set. We've got the dashes, which means speed is being managed by the computer. VNAV and LNAV should theoretically be handled mostly by the computer. Again, not an Airbus guru. Climb, thrust. We are flying on the flight bars, so you can see if I bring the range in a little bit closer here, it's going to fly norm, the waypoint norm, and and then it's going to make a sweeping right-hand corner. We'll fly back out over here and then down towards the 230-degree direction. Norm at 7,000. And we are obviously speed constrained below 10,000 to 250 knots. Aircraft managing that quite well. And pretty decent climb rate there. Go outside and listen to it for a second. There we go. Matter of fact, I think let's try a flyby. There we go. Okay, we're at 7,000, leveled off to 50, and it is making that right-hand corner. So we'll just continue to do that. Essentially what this is looking like here is that we are going to fly the path that you saw from the external view plate there in the beginning. We're just going to fly all of these, and I won't do it all in real time because I feel like that's quite a burden for time. So 10,000 feet is the limit, and then we're gonna go and program the GPS to 17,000, and then we're gonna climb from there, follow the rest of the way, and then essentially for me it's gonna be almost 2,148 miles. We have a fuel prediction of 16.9 tons on board when we get there. It's given us our extra time, 3.4 tons, 24 minutes of extra fuel time is what I believe. And that's what makes this aircraft interesting, is that these numbers, in my experience, are very, very realistic as long as you set up your Simbrief properly and you fly your flight plan the way you're supposed to, and you're keeping with your proper performance in terms of your throttle settings and the altitude you're supposed to fly out. All of this essentially works out very, very well. So again, hard to compute this, but we should be able to stop in 2,135 meters. So we have 983 meters as a margin of excess. This actually, I picked the 8 right approach because it is the one strip at Honolulu that is over the water. So we're going to be basically flying pretty much with Pearl Harbor. We're going to come north of the island, right? And then we're going to skirt the island with the KSFO approach. And then from the KSFO approach, we're basically going to go straight into runway 8 with Pearl Harbor off to our left, and Honolulu will be straight out of our nose window. And I set this for an early morning flight, that way you all can have a landing along with me. So yeah, 5 hours for me, and I'll do some cut shots on the way so that you can see us when we're at our cruising altitude, 38,000 feet. And then after that, I'll bring in right towards the end of the KSFO approach, and we'll land, and I can show you what it's like to land the Toliss A340. So that being said, everything looks like it's right on track the way it needs to be. We'll throw our scan radar on there, although I'm not predicting any weather. It looked really nice out there. System 1. And then we'll let that do its thing. And you can see, the computer is literally flying what it needs to fly. So I'm going to go ahead and rotate this up to 10,000. Flight level change by pulling the dial out. Auto throttles managed. So in theory, we should have been climbing probably to the magenta line there on the plan. We should be at 10,000 by that plan. It's 9.7 miles. 3,000, 32, 33, 3,400 feet climb. We're using climb power to get up there. Out over the Pacific. So quite a bit of excess power today. This aircraft is capable of well over 6,000 nautical miles. So the fact that we're taking it just about 3,000 miles in total or whatever, let's see here. We were looking at essentially on the flight plan 2,133 miles. I mean, it's a third of the range that it can do. Maybe even a little less than a third of the range, so we don't have to carry a lot of fuel. That way 300 passengers as opposed to 440 or whatever the max is, depending on your cargo settings. There's a lot of room for power here because of the levels of thrust that we have with these newer engines. So obviously 10,000 feet. Let's go ahead and throw our landing lights off. 10,000 just like that. Then our next one is going to be SFO at 11,420. But from here, I'm going to program accordingly up to top of climb, 38,000 feet. So when we're there, I'll bring it back. Thanks for joining me. Hopefully you're still with me. No sweat. You won't have to watch the whole task of going 2,100 miles to Honolulu. So, see you at 38,000. Okay, and just like that, we are indeed at flight level 380. We will be doing our step climb in approximately a while, right? We are heading towards Bebop, 29 nautical miles out. Then we've got Bart, Baraz, Billow, and then we have the step climb from 38 to 40. That'll be our top cruising altitude today. But that's not going to happen for a while. So, I mean, for example, we're looking at 391 nautical miles just right there at the BART. So, yeah, it's going to be a couple minutes here for me. Overall, we haven't traveled too far. We are 2020 in terms of remaining distance in nautical miles. We are out over the Pacific, though, obviously, as you can see in the little EFB there. So we're well on our way, but we've got a long way to go. Everything's okay. All the systems are normal. No weird smells, no complaining passengers. So far, so good. Everything's great. So now's a great time to pull out the lunch tables and get up our picnic baskets all set up here and have some food while we look at this awesome view on our way to Honolulu. So we are cruising relatively easy now at 260 knots indicated, which is nice because we essentially are economically cruising now. We're so light. We have a lot of passengers, but we don't have a lot of fuel. So we're able to do a relatively decent speed because we don't have a gigantic distance to go in comparison to how far the aircraft can go. So with everything working great, I'm going to go ahead, throw some flybys, and unfortunately for me, fortunate for you, you don't have to do the 2,000 nautical miles as stated earlier with me. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to chill out here, enjoy the view, listen to the sounds, and then we're ready for the Cana 2 approach. We should be just short, within tens of miles possibly, of the runway 8 right threshold there in Honolulu. So, everything said and done, we'll see us in a little bit, like in about 4.5 hours on my time. Catch us later. Okay, and welcome to this interjection here. 643 nautical miles to go, and I just want to speak a little bit about the process of descent and our final start and approach. And so you can see our UTC time is 19:26 and counting. We're going to reach BITA at approximately UTC 2019, so a little bit just under an hour to BITA basically. And our top of descent is going to be at 2028 UTC. So about, what, an hour and almost a minute here. So that'll be coming down from 40,000 feet after we go through BITA. The thing is, I want you to remember that, because in an explanation, I'll show you exactly what that means. So we've also got Cana on here, Cana 2 to be exact. If we go over to our Abby tab page and we look at our information for Honolulu, what we're going to see here is we want to do the star for the arrival. We knew that we were doing the Cana 2. And we also knew, as I zoom in here, that we were going to do the BITA. So that is what's in our MCDU. If we follow the BITA line all the way through to the northern side of Honolulu, we will eventually run into the Cana waypoint for the star. Cana is going to bring us around the westerly side of the island and wrap us around on the approach straight into 8 right. Now, when we transition from the star to the approach, we know that it's 8 right, so we're going to be doing the RNAV for that. So to bring up this Jeppesen plate, the nice thing about these are the radio frequencies, the final approach courses, and all of the information associated with performing a successful landing here. So, if we come in from this direction, north-northwest, we are going to be heading south-southeast towards Kitki, Toliss, Huxor, and Evie for the final straight in. If we scroll down further, and I zoom in just a notch or two, we can see a descent angle of 3.25 degrees. Here's your Kitki at 3100. Here's your Toliss at 3100. From Toliss, we descended a 3.25 degree downward angle to reach Huxor at 2000, Evie at 700, and then a final of runway 8 right via RNAV approach. Disclaimer, that is not professional guidance. It is just what's going on in our X-Plane 12 flight. But I'd also like to show you a little bit about the landing itself. So we are set to brake mode 2, and I can change this. If we want to stop faster, we can put it to, say, 4 or high, anything in between. And it'll show us all of the margins that we have and all of the requirements that we have to actually come to a complete stop. So With the brake mode set to 4, we'll have 1,724 extra meters of stopping distance, but in an effort to be realistic and to land without jamming on the brakes, I'll just go to a modest 2, and then I will compute, and then it'll tell us how much space we need to land and how much extra margin we'll still have. So that being said, it also calculates the approach speeds and tells us that our status is okay because we are not going to be overweight when we land at Honolulu. So we know that. We also know that we have our stats page. It says how much fuel we've burned, and it says on the fuel page that we're going to arrive with an estimated fuel on board of 16 tons. I believe that's tons. However, there's still excess in the tank. We have extra 6.4 tons with a time of 44 minutes in case we miss the approach or inclement weather for the first round. We have to go into a holding pattern or reverse our steps and come in for a second attempt at a landing, so on and so forth. So we have plenty of that. Now if we go to the performance page and I go to the approach plate here, screen, I've got the QNH in, I've got the temperature, the magnetic direction of the wind, plus the wind speed. Transition altitude, flight level 180 with an approach of 147 knots and a final landing speed of 142. We've got our speed restrictions for our flaps. We've got our 8 right approach, also in the MCDU. We've got the mean decision altitude, MDA, whatever that is. It's essentially not the decision height. It is a less strict version. Take that for a grain of salt. Non-approved Airbus God, but that's 250 feet. So hopefully we'll get a call out for that. It is set, and being the lack of professionalism enthusiast that I am, everything is as set as I can make it. The fuels all look good. Flight controls all look good. And there's no warnings. There's no lights. No nothing. Only thing we have is clear skies ahead of us and above us, and some decent clouds below us, but they're very fluffy, and they look great. So that being said, and going back to the flight plan, since we're at 40,000 feet, what I would like to do is transition us back to the next segment of the video after Bida, as a matter of fact, probably closer to Cana, because I would like to keep the length of the video as short as possible. But like I said, I've got right around an hour or so, a little bit more towards top of descent. So it's going to be a minute, couple minutes, 60 plus as a matter of speaking. And then that way we'll be around 10,000 feet or a little less when we bring the video back. Instantaneous for you as always, but a little bit over an hour for me. So we're getting there to Honolulu. Things are looking good, plenty of sunlight left, and we are in a more than capable A340-600 by Toliss. Very, very cool. See you in a few seconds. So, welcome back. We are setting out at 8,400 feet. We're almost to Cana, 10 nautical miles. We've got our landing lights on, our QNH set, our QNH refreshed on the destination page for our approach. Our fuel, 7.3 tons, 50 minutes time. On that, we've got estimated fuel on board for arrival, 15.9 tons. So it's very close. That was almost 3,000 nautical miles, give or take, whatever it was, from San Francisco to here. And the calculations by the computer are very, very accurate to what they said they were going to be, so you can rely on your Simbrief. Essentially, whatever it's telling you is pretty much what's going to go on. So let's go ahead and turn our rotation in here so that you can see what's going on here with our approach. So there's our Cana 2. There are all of our other things. I've gone ahead and set up essentially a new view so that you can see down here, hopefully not have to squint too much. We're just going to step approach this down basically. So when we do that, what we're going to do is make sure that the aircraft knows at what altitude to be at what waypoint, and it will do its best to essentially get us there. So again, this won't be exactly by the book, but it should be relevant enough for us to be able to fly through the clouds and get an approach into 8 right on the RNAV, and hopefully what I consider to be a VFR approach. So, it's something that's always good when you go on a flight this long, which I have sat through. Of course, some time was truncated off of that because I did not start the ET timer right as I wanted to, but that's 4 hours and 14 minutes that the sim has been running. Everything's been running fine. So, just a testament to the calculations and the simulator itself. That is not to compare apples to apples or apples to oranges or anything else. It's just that X-Plane works as well as any other sim on the market, especially this being the full release. Things shouldn't get too out of hand with this, as pretty much we are right on track, so there shouldn't hopefully be any surprises with this. And I'm pulling to get the flight level change. Everything's looking good. We're flying our green path. And this is why I wanted to show you all that for context. That way you could see when we were at 40,000 feet what was going to happen now. That way when we actually get to the final approach, you can understand where we're coming from and what we're doing. So obviously this is going southward on the westerly side of the mountain here. I filmed some of my most recent videos on just over the side of that ridge there at the Dillingham Field there, PHDH, I believe. I did the piston and turbine Duke out there in Microsoft Flight Simulator. So this area is familiar territory to me. It seems like I'm flying out here more often than not. Even though you did not sit through the entire flight in duration of almost 5.5 hours, whatever it was, I lost track at this point. I felt the only real way to go through the fuel burn was to actually sit through the process here and force the aircraft in the simulator to burn the fuel at the real-time rates that it was saying it was going to burn it at. That way I couldn't just skip ahead. There's no plugins for this. This is a vanilla sim, so I don't have any slew mode. I didn't empty the tanks. This is exactly what it's been. And to show you that, if we go to the engine page, it's used approximately 9,100 kilograms per engine. So that was all of the fuel per engine in total, equaling, if you times those numbers by 4 or add them up, essentially they're very the same. So you'll get how much fuel we burnt. So it was a real thing. It really got burned from San Francisco to here. And we are obviously on our final approach. Aircraft's been flawless. The level of detail, there are certainly things that I have not, in my lack of professionalism, shown. There is the green, blue, and yellow hydraulic systems. Those are all simulated. Obviously, tank transfer for fuel is simulated. VHF radios and comms, they're all simulated and they work. So pressurization. When I say what you see is what you get, essentially that indeed is the story with this Toliss A340. So, in the event that we don't want to fry anybody on the ground with the radar, I'm going to go ahead and turn off our weather radar because there's no reason to irradiate the people on the tarmac. So we're essentially at RABs here, then we're going to the kit key. Rather, Makoa 2 kit key. 2 nautical miles to RABs. And then I will order up a flight level change. Approximately 3,300 feet. And then in going back to our Avi tab here, kit key is 3,100 and then Collis. So we are essentially after Collis, we should be looking for that 3.25 degree down bubble towards the threshold. So there's not much of a change there between 3,360 and 3,100. So I'm going to call up 3,100, preemptively get into that. If you look at our 12 o'clock there to the right, if you can see my mouse pointer, essentially that's where we are headed for. Pearl Harbor being this body of inland water here. Very historic and infamous place, as we all know. Respect to those in our military who serve. Thank you for what you do. That being said, let's go ahead and dial into the 10 nautical mile range here. We're going to make that S-curve to the right from Makoa to Collis, 3,100. But we should be at 3,100 by Makoa. Because this is a nice VFR day, I'll more than likely hand fly that. Approach in, that's what this is all about. Experiencing the Toliss A340 after a long journey. And there's the autopilot navigating to the right for us. The one thing I will say essentially about this simulator as opposed to Microsoft Flight Simulator, when you key in autopilot changes, one of the nice things about the autopilot here is it seems to maintain a smoother flight. It's not as jerky when you order up flight level changes. It doesn't just ram you straight to the sky or straight into the ground. It's a lot smoother. I would prefer in a 340 to be not making banks like this with 300 passengers on board. However, everything is seemingly a-okay. So we'll straighten out. There's our approach there. We're going to speed down here. .200 knots. Let's go ahead and toggle that gear. About now, let's go ahead and move the altitude hold. We'll keep the throttle, the auto throttle on, and we'll fly this approach manually. So, gear down, clear the master warning. get too high. We want to fly within our flight envelope here. And 190 knots.
$2,500.
And we're high, but it's better to have more energy than less. Be too low. So again, thank you for joining me here at the channel today. Hopefully you've enjoyed what essentially has been a long flight for me, but I wanted to let you see the Toliss A340. Look at that, there's even what appears to be a sailboat at the end of the runway. This is not St. Martin. Can't do that here.
Sink rate.
1,000.
Sink rate. Sink rate.
And we'll roll
Sink
out
rate.
a little bit longer.
Sink
It's
rate.
telling me that I'm
Sink
descending
rate.
too quickly,
Sink
but we're right at the red.
Pull up. Pull
And
up.
because we have an
Pull
excess of
Pull
runway
up.
here,
Pull
I'm going
up.
to use that excess runway that we
up.
have.
Pull up.
300.
100 above.
Pull
200.
up.
Minimum.
Pull up.
And we're a little fast for a
Pull
landing,
up.
so let's just go ahead and
Sink rate.
turn the
Sink
rate.
auto brake
Too
on
low.
a little bit.
30. 20.
Retard.
10.
5.
And that's just the noise of the wheels bouncing up and down. Reverse on 2 and 3, reverse on 1 and 4. And speed brakes are deployed. Okay, so that right there is why we like to land with excess. If you program too much fuel in there, of course you are landing heavier and it requires quite a bit more room to land, but being able to fly in with just the right amount of fuel in excess, we were able to salvage that and not do a go around from the excess of energy of being too high. However, the weight is what I want to essentially make mention of here. I want to mention how this aircraft feels, the physics of it, the suspension travel, and all the things that make this the Toliss A340 are what essentially to me differentiate between what I would call study level and not study level. We'll retract the flaps. We've already got our speed brake on the way up. And we are here in Honolulu, for better or worse. One of the things I like about running the independent throttles is the differential thrust you can do. So when you're spooling up the right-hand engines and pulling a left corner, you can assist in the steering just a little bit if need be. These are really wide taxiways, so it's not necessary to go overboard with that, but regardless, we are here. And then what we can do from here is we can turn the APU back on and go to the APU page. And then once that says open, we'll be able to start up the APU. Get that accessory power going for us so that we can turn these engines off at the next earliest convenience. Flap open, and let's bring the APU to life. We'll remove the landing lights, and we'll go to the taxi lights. Strobes to auto, and we can manage it just like that. APU coming alive. And again, I hope that this displays the level of detail. Ah, there's a B2 on the runway. Oh, I suspect the autogen traffic is very unique in this game, that's for sure. We'll take this right-hand corner. And one of the reasons I specifically picked 8 right was because I wanted to feel the weight and show you the visuals and let you hear the sound of the touchdown. Even now you can still at this idle pace hear this aircraft chugging away. The sounds are working and everything's as it should be, which is really nice. It's a step above a lot of other DLC. How would I compare this to Microsoft Flight Simulator? Well, or even the Latin VFR A340, I think it's clear by the level of this. If you know anything about the Toliss aircraft, you know that they are quite the bit of kit. Yes, this is, in my opinion, very expensive. $100+ for a DLC aircraft is a lot for a ticket of entry, but at the same time, you can see what you're getting for your product. This is clearly something that's been out for a while, and in saying that, not only has it been out for a while, but they've also had numerous improvements, you know, patches, things of that nature. And the fidelity that this craft offers, I feel, is definitely, well, I don't know any other Airbus 340s that have this level of sim to them. And so regardless, I'm just happy that what we see in the cabin here, in the cockpit, and what we see out the windows is sufficient. You know, barring X-Plane 12 versus 2020 Flight Simulator, you know, even post-service update 15 for Simulator, we'll see what the ground patch change does for the tire physics and all that. Although I can tell you, this certainly has probably been the most, should I say, I don't want to sound cheesy, but the most authentic person-to-sim experience I've ever felt. Being in the aviation industry for as long as I have as a maintenance technician, and having the opportunity on several occasions to taxi aircraft back to the hangars, things like CRJ 200s and 700s, as well as, you know, your occasional Airbus A320. Even in the event that I had the opportunity one time to taxi a 757 with the Rolls-Royce 211s on it, that was pretty extraordinary as well. The feel that you get from the TFRP rudders, as well as the side stick with the tiller and the weight of the aircraft in general, just provide an experience here like none other. None other. Yes, Simulator has Bing Maps, it's sort of unbeatable, you know, in terms of visual fidelity, but this aircraft is phenomenal. This is literally me saying, as the most unprofessional Airbus pilot there's probably ever been in a sim. Flying it, you know, the unforgivability and the realism of the sim coming in high like that and fast. We were still able to pull off a landing after a 5-hour flight, not having to do a single go around, and this being the aircraft fly-by-wire that it is, it was just an awesome experience. Just an awesome experience. Go outside real quick, huh? For all intents and purposes, when you're at 40,000 feet, I wouldn't say there's anything necessarily wrong with the graphics in this game. It's definitely nice enough where you can enjoy it, for sure. So in reality, naturally, whatever it is those are, landing lights would not be in the way. So we'll just slide around them and plan to go to a larger parking space, in that we do not want to try to park a 340 with general aviation. This is also just another chance for me to, you know, obviously overstate how I feel about the aircraft, and it also gives you the opportunity to see it taxiing in real time. I also want to mention another disclaimer. It is clear that in the real world an Airbus would not be legally flown with a single pilot, so all of the tasks that you're going to have to manage on a 4-engine aircraft by yourself would have a workload shed that would be a little bit different in the real world, because you would have extra hands and eyes, as well as more than likely somebody sitting behind you, both in the jump seat or 2 jump seats for that matter. So is the aircraft a lot to handle by yourself? Well, it's not overburdening, but knowing what you're doing before you get to a waypoint or an altitude, and having a pre-designated flight plan and setting up your MCU all in the appropriate fashion is something that this plane almost absolutely requires. And just as you saw, if you don't fly it by the numbers on final approach there, it will let you know indefinitely that you are not doing the right thing. But that's what I like about it. Save face, save a little bit of embarrassment. My terrible A340 piloting skills, you can see that it's not going to pretend to tell you that you're flying the plane the right way. If it's not correct, you will know about it. And I respect that. I really respect that. For $100, I feel that's absolutely a necessity when it comes to a simulation of this level. So rather than drag this out any longer, I'm just going to pull in here between that 747 and that Delta 767. Big airplane here. So yes, rather lengthy video. If you've made it this far, I appreciate it. Please comment below. Let me know. Throw a like, throw a dislike. It all helps me. It lets me calibrate my content for you, hopefully better each and every time. You know, and that being said, if you did make it this far, thank you. Thank you. But there's literally no way to demonstrate an aircraft like this in 5 minutes. So to get an accurate sense, of fuel burn, you sort of have to do a long duration flight so that you can essentially see what's going to happen on the way. Is it accurate? Isn't it accurate? And it was pretty much right on board. I mean, with the stats, if we go to the fuel page, right, it's got 14.9, so we're 1,000 off. However, I descended just a little bit early before I turned you guys on for the camera. So that pretty much equates for the extra 1,000 pounds or whatever, the extra 1,000 on the reading that we burnt. I don't know if it's pounds. It's obviously 1,000 kilograms, but that equates for it. So the accuracy level there is really nice. It's really nice to see that. And it was exactly the same when I did the off-camera flight from here, Honolulu, to Kansai Airport in Japan, right there in that man-made reclaimed island. They made that airport. Really cool place to visit. So it's highly accurate and it's a lot of fun. There's no doubt about that. No marshalers here, so just my own professionalism trying to get us home. Pretty close. The gutsy thing to do to drive a fuel truck past an A340 with 4 engines running. Okay, so park and brake is on, and that's the way the cookie crumbles. Let's just turn it off since we've already been long as it is. So we're not going to turn the APU bleed on. We could if we wanted to provide cabin environment for those on board. But that is all she wrote, essentially, other than turning off all of the subsystems. That would be it. So let's go ahead and we'll turn the APU off. Let's go back to the APU page. Battery power. battery off, battery 2, and battery 1. Still getting used to the cameras. But that's it. So essentially, you saw the takeoff at San Francisco. I gave you the update mid-flight. We flew the Simbrief flight plan and wound up in Honolulu in one piece with the less than beautiful landing. But any landing you can walk away from is a bad landing in my case. Anyhow, this is AOK Games. Thanks for joining me here on my new X-Plane 12. Plan on hopefully making content for this and Microsoft Flight Simulator for the duration. I'll be back soon, hopefully sooner than later. And I know this was a long one, but regardless, thanks for your time if you made it this far. I appreciate every single one of you. So, until next time, we'll see you later. Bye-bye.